everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is the first video of mine that you are seeing. If you are new here, my name is Julia Kelsey. I am 25 years old. I live in Orlando, Florida, and I have a budgeting and money management coaching business that I first started over on Instagram but have brought over to YouTube as well. And this is where I show and share with others that budgeting and money management can be simple and something that's actually enjoyable, and help others get to the place where they're easily accomplishing their financial goals while still being able to live a life that they enjoy. So today's video is going to be another financial goals and net worth update video. So I do these monthly, and basically at the beginning of the year I did a financial goals video where I explained all of the goals that I have for myself throughout the year of 2022. And in these monthly videos I go through the prior month and talk through those same exact goals and show you my progress towards them, if I'm ahead of schedule, behind schedule, and kind of my thoughts regarding my progress for the year. Also in these videos, I like to do a net worth update, so I show you my entire net worth calculation, the different components that make it up, and what my final net worth number was compared to the prior month. As always, in this video I will be showing you my budgeting template, and if you like these trackers and think they might work for you, I do sell them individually on my website for just $10, and that includes the goals tracker and the net worth tracker I will show you today, as well as the budgeting templates I show you in my budget with me videos. So if you're interested in that, I will leave the link in the description, and all of these templates are always included in any of my coaching packages as well. So let's get started and see what I was able to accomplish throughout the month of June. So starting with my goals tracker like we normally do, and the first line item here I have is income. So I didn't set a specific goal for income in that financial goals video. However, this is really an important component to keep track of because this is the money that's going to flow to those goals that you do have. So I do like to have a running total of what I am bringing in month to month, so I can assure that I have sufficient income to fund the goals that I do have. And as we can see, June was definitely a good month for this category. We can see that I brought in $4,657 in the month of June, and that's a good chunk above what I've been seeing come in on average throughout the prior months of the year. And you can see what I did with that extra income if you go check out my June budget recap video. But any income obviously is a big plus because that is extra money that you can put towards your goals. So that is what I had come in June, and that brings my total for the year to $26,531. And like I said, I didn't set a specific goal for this. However, I knew that I averaged at least $4,000 a month in income, so that is the baseline that I used for my goal. So I just did 4,000 times 12, which would be a goal of 48,000. And I want to have a goal here because that allows me to calculate a percent completed. So what this is it shows me the percent of this goal that I've completed given the portion of the year that has passed so far. So obviously June is halfway through the year, so I should expect to be halfway through all of my goals, or 50% completed. So that is the benchmark that I will use when I'm looking at all of these goals. So we can see my percent completed for income is 55.3%, which makes perfect sense because if we look at my year so far, my income in all of these months have been above 4,000. So it makes sense that I'm above that 50% mark, and just another indicator to show me that I have extra income coming in to go towards extra expenses, but also more importantly to go towards my goals. And then the next line item here are my expenses, and I did set kind of an indirect goal for this category. So I said in that video that I want to have 75% of my income going towards expenses, meaning the other 25% would go towards financial goals. So that's kind of the benchmark that I used to come up with my goal in this line. So we can see in June my expenses were $3,255, and that brings my total for the year to $18,876. So like I mentioned, my goal for this is just 75% of that income goal, so that would be $36,000, and we can see that my percent completed is at 52%. Now this is above that 50%, and we would want expenses to be limited as much as possible, so even under that 50% if possible. However, an important thing to keep in mind here is that we have had more income come in than expected, which would mean that 75% benchmark would be higher as well. So it's not too surprising to see this be above that 50%. And we can see that it's only 2% above that 50% benchmark, whereas the income was 5% above it. So we know that all that extra income that we're bringing in isn't going directly to expenses. We know we're still under that threshold, so we know we don't need to be too concerned about this, but maybe just something to keep an eye on, so we make sure we still stay within those guidelines and the spending isn't increasing too much. And then moving on to my debt section, which I've mentioned many times throughout the year is my highest priority for the year. My main goal being that I want to get my student loans under $37,000 by the end of this year. So these are the two individual goals I have to accomplish that bigger goal. So we can see the first one is my student loan, just my minimum payment, and we can see that I paid my 9/11 in June just like normal. That's my expected minimum payment to pay every month this year. So that brings my total to $5,469, and my goal here, very simple to calculate, just that 9/11 times 12, because like I said, I expect to pay that every month. So we can see my percent completed here is exactly 50%, which makes perfect sense because I've made every single one of my minimum payments thus far throughout the year. And then the next line item is the more interesting one. This is where my extra payments come in to get me to that finish line of being under $37,000. So at the beginning of the year, I calculated what I would need above my minimum payments, taking into account what I thought I would pay in interest and all of that, to accomplish that goal, and I calculated that to be $11,500. So if I'm expected to pay just under $11,000 in minimum payments, then I would need just over $500 to make up that difference, so specifically $563. So this is the goal I have of extra payments that I want to pay throughout this year towards my student loans. Now we can see that I have zeros across the board in this line item, and that is because I haven't actually made any of these payments yet. But that doesn't mean I haven't saved anything, and we'll see that a little bit later in my savings section. This just shows me that I haven't physically made the payments yet, which I was a little bummed about because I actually did really want to make an actual payment in June. But after looking at a couple of interest calculators, I realized that paying an amount now and paying it at the end of the year really isn't going to save me much of anything in interest. The difference was like $3. It was basically nothing. So I'm not too concerned about pushing this out a little bit longer, allowing myself to save a little bit more money and make those payments at the end of the year if needed. So of course that means my percent completed is 0 since I haven't made any payments yet, and we can actually see my percent completed for the debt section in total, which is at 47.6%, and this makes perfect sense because I'm right on track with the minimum payments but then haven't made any extra payments yet. And then moving on to my investing section, this is not a high priority for this year just because I do want to focus on the debt, but I do have a couple of things that I do want to keep track of just to make sure I'm not losing too much progress in this area. So the first one is my 401k. This was my employee sponsored plan back when I had the 9 to 5. So we can see I'm not making any more contributions to this because I don't have that job anymore, but I did make contributions at the beginning of the year, and this is just why I will keep track of that. So we can see the 494 contributions that I made earlier, and I don't have a goal in this category just because this is kind of up in the air. I don't know what this account is going to turn into, and I can't as of right now make any more contributions to it. So whether this rolls into an IRA or I just make a new account completely, I don't have answers to those questions yet, so I'm not going to make a goal for this section. However, this brings me to the next line item, which is my IRA, which is something that I want to start in this year to continue to be making contributions towards retirement. So this is kind of my main investment goal for the year, and that is to start a Roth IRA and then start making contributions to it. And I knew that this was going to be a second half of the year goal. I knew this wasn't something that I was going to start right from the start of the year. So I'm kind of in the transition phase of starting up this goal. I've done a little bit of research about potentially rolling over my 401k, but not too much has started yet. But in the next couple of months, I'm definitely hoping for progress to pick up in this area. So like I said, there's been no contributions to this thus far. However, I do have a goal here. I ideally want to have $2,000 put into this account by the end of the year. That might be a little bit optimistic with the other goals that I have, but it's something that I want to strive for and put as much towards as possible. And again, just 0% completed since I haven't started making progress towards this goal yet. And then the next section is my savings section, and this kind of falls in between the two. It's not as high of a priority as the debt, but it's a little bit higher than investing, and that's just because I want to make sure I have money set aside for certain expenses that I know will pop up, and I don't want them to ruin my debt progress, so I want to be prepared for them ahead of time. And that's exactly what this first line item is for, my sinking funds. So many savings accounts where I'm preparing for larger expenses or unexpected expenses that I know will come up at some point, but I just don't know when and I don't know how much. So these are setting me up for success in that area. And in June, like I mentioned, I had that extra income come in. So I was able to make a lot of extra progress here, which was great because my buffers in some of these categories were definitely dwindling and I didn't want them to get too low. So being able to put an extra chunk towards this was really good. So we can see I put $400 towards my sinking funds in June, which is a good $100 plus over what I had been doing. And that brings my total for the year to $1,570. And now my goal in this category, I calculated at the beginning of the year by estimating what I would spend within each of these categories and then just adding them all together. So that came to $3,500, and we can see that my percent completed is basically 45%. So definitely under the 50% threshold that we are looking for, but I was able to make up a good chunk of this with that extra income. So a couple things to keep in mind here with this being basically behind schedule. So I can make it a point to increase my allocations towards my sinking funds throughout the rest of the year and start funneling more money towards these to be able to reach that goal, or I can be happy with not reaching this goal. And I feel like I'm gonna fall somewhere in between. Like we've seen in my past couple budget with me videos, I have started increasing a little bit of these categories to account for extra spending. However, once I build those buffers back up, if I don't continue to keep spending and then my spending kind of slows down a little bit and I don't need to keep continuing the extra money, I will probably bring it back down and start putting that money back towards debt again. So it's just a balance between the two of wanting to have sufficient savings and sinking funds available for expenses that I know will come up at some point, and still being able to put as much extra towards debt as possible. So that is kind of the balance that I'm looking for in this category, and if that means falling a little bit short of this goal, goal, I'm okay with that if it means making sure that I reach my debt goal. And then speaking on my debt goal, this next line item is almost like another debt item. This is my student loan fund. So this is the savings account that I have where I'm accumulating all of my extra dollars until it's a larger amount. And this is the amount that I'm going to use to make those extra student loan payments. So this is what I was mentioning before. This is the money that I have set aside for that extra $563 that I want to put towards my student loans. And we can see again with that extra income I had in June, I was able to put a decent chunk, the highest chunk that I've done so far this year, into this savings account. So I was able to put $90 into my student loan fund, and that brings the total for the year to $122. So we can see again, my goal is the same here, it's just that 563 that I calculated earlier. And so we can see my percent completed is 21.6%. Obviously under that 50% that we're looking for. However, I was able to increase this so much in June that I'm so happy with that progress. And I know that this is going to be up and down throughout these months, obviously because it depends on that extra income that I'm able to bring in. So there's going to be months where there's $90 left over that I can put towards this, and some months where there's zero, and that's just how it happens. So as long as I'm doing the best I can to put every single extra dollar towards the savings account, I'm happy with the progress being made. And finally, that brings us to the percent completed for the savings section in total, which is 41.6%, which makes sense that this would be below the 50% because both of those two line items were also below the 50%. And finally, my last goal, which I mentioned when talking about my expenses, is my percent of income. So I want 25% of my income going towards financial goals and 75% going towards expenses. So we can see in June I did really well in this area. So I had 30% going towards financial goals, 5% above what I expected, which makes sense because I had that extra income to put towards mostly savings, and then 75% went towards expenses. And then we can see for the year I still have a good buffer going in this area. So I've had 28% go towards financial goals, and that means 72% go towards expenses. So I still have a good buffer going that I created at the beginning of the year, just in case I have months coming up that are the opposite of what I would like. I have this buffer to counteract that. So now let's move on and do a net worth update. So just a reminder, the net worth calculation is calculated as your assets minus your liabilities, or everything that you own minus everything that you owe. So we're going to go through those two different components for myself and show you what my final net worth number was as of the end of June. So starting with my assets, my first asset here is my checking account cushion. So this is basically the money I have sitting in my checking account at any point in time in case bills come out higher than expected, or I have an unexpected expense that I just need money readily available for. I have this buffer in that account ready to go. So I normally average around $2,000 to $2,500 in this account. So we can see at June it was $1,952, and that was an increase from May of just under $100, which makes sense because I had a little bit extra to go towards my sinking funds and built that buffer back up. And then the next item are my savings, so my emergency fund and then my student loan fund, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. So within those two accounts I have $7,781 as of June, and that was a decrease of just under $2,000, which makes sense because I had to pull a little bit from my emergency fund. And then finally, my retirement. This has been an interesting one throughout this entire year, which we've probably all seen. The market has just been up and down throughout the months. We had a really good month in May, and then unfortunately it went back down in June. Honestly, not too surprising. We know that these fluctuations are going to happen, but in the end it will all work out and be a net positive in the end after many years of investing this money. So we can see that in June my retirement account, which is just my 401k, was at $31,988, and that was a decrease from May of $1,037. So again, a pretty big decrease from the prior month, but as we saw in May, we had the same amount of an increase. So it's just going to fluctuate for the next couple of months. I know that in the end this account is going to continue to grow. And then finally, the last asset is just the value of my car. So I don't do anything specific here. I just have a Carfax report that my dealership sends me. So that said that in June my car was valued at $19,280, and that again was a decrease of $730 from May, which I mentioned in my May update video that that report looked a little high, so I wouldn't be surprised if it went back down in June, and that's exactly what happened. So in total my assets decreased by $3,665. Obviously we would have liked for my assets to increase, but with having to take from the emergency fund and with my retirement decreasing, this is just how the month played out. But we were able to counteract that a little bit with decreasing the liabilities as well. So I just have two liabilities, the first one being obviously my student loans. So my student loan balance at the end of June was $41,157, and that is a decrease from May of $743. So that's the portion of my payment going towards the principal, and then the other like 200-ish went towards interest. And then the other one is my car loan. So that balance was at $18,772, and that's just a decrease of $302, which is my entire car payment. I have an interest-free loan as of right now, so the entire payment goes straight towards the principal. So my liabilities decreased by $1,046. So at least we have that amount to counteract the decreases in the assets, because we always would want to see liabilities decreasing. So that brings us to the final net worth number, which as of June was $1,071. And that's a decrease from May of $2,618, which looks a little bit concerning. But again, if we look back at April, my net worth was $1,000 and it jumped right up to $3,000 in May. So we know that this is going to go up and down, especially with me just crossing over to that positive line item. The fluctuations are going to look very obvious and kind of alarming as of right now. But again, just keeping in mind that market fluctuations are normal and that we will continue to see growth over time, even if we have fluctuations throughout the individual months. So that is it for my June financial goals and net worth update video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. And if you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can see more videos like this from me. Also, go follow me over on Instagram so you can see content from me in between YouTube videos. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.